I was sleeping at 3 a.m. in my basement room. Then I woke up to the sound of someone moaning in agony on the couch. The way my room is laid out, I couldn't see him, so I just assumed I was hearing things and tried to go back to sleep. But the moaning didn't go away. 5 minutes later, I leaned up and saw his legs and shoes. At first I thought it was same as a friend who had been over earlier. But nope, he wasn't the one. So I leaned up farther and discovered that he's Hispanic while my friend is Greek. I sat there for 30 seconds and my first thought was to attack the fellow. But I remembered that my room locks from the outside. So I moved towards the door. He heard my footsteps and chased after me. I ran out of the room and locked him in. I sprinted up 2 flights of stairs to wake up my parents and let them know that there was an intruder in the house. They thought I was having a bad dream or something. Then they walked downstairs with me, and right as we approached my room, the intruder used the edge of a 10 pounds weight to break through the door. Oh, there was actually a guy in there, my mom shouted while reaching for the phone to call 911. My father went up to the middle floor of the house and drew a broadsword from the mostly decorative suit of armor in the living room. He then asked me to fetch the cavalry saber from the umbrella stand. 5 minutes later, police arrive. We opened the door to let them in. They arrested the poor fellow who was drugged out of his mind. Apparently he had got in diving through a window. I had taken sleeping meds, so I didn't wake up when the glass shattered. They inform us it's technically a citizen's arrest because of the confinement. It's been a few months later and I was diagnosed with PTSD mid-August. The hallucinations and flashbacks are brutal. But the worst part is the shame. Shortly after graduating from high school, I woke up one morning and found my father dead in our living room. I tried giving CPR, but he was already dead by the time I came out. I suffered PTSD from this event and would regularly have nightmares where I would be walking to the living room and I would realize what I was about to see and I would start screaming before I got there, and then I would wake up screaming. This lasted about a year where I was not a functioning human being. I would stay awake for days to not experience the dream over again. Then one day I had a mental breakdown in the middle of the day. According to my girlfriend, who is now my wife, said that I tensed up like I was having a seizure for about an hour straight. In my mind, I had to keep living out that morning over and over, but I would stop myself before I went into the living room with a primal scream, which my wife said I would do in real life as well, until I finally let myself go into the living room and see my father's dead body. After I came out of it, I did not have the nightmares anymore. Flash forward to 2005, I joined the army and am in Iraq. I was leading a convoy and we had intel that terrorists were sending children out in front of convoys to get them to stop and ambush them. As I was driving, a kid runs out about 300 meters in front of my vehicle and I froze. We had orders to run over anyone in our way and I was dreading having to make this decision. My truck chief is screaming at me to floor it, so I did, but the kid dodges out of the way at the last second. When we got to the next fob, I went to get some sleep, but I was disturbed about the moral choices I had made that day. As I fell asleep, I had a nightmare that I was driving again and the kid jumps out in front of me. This time I run him over, but then stopped feeling the horror of what I did. I went to check the body, and as I went round the back of the truck, I got that same dreaded feelings I used to have. Somehow in my brain, I remembered my old nightmares, but assured myself it's not the same. As I get around the truck, I saw my father's dead body, then I went straight into my primal screaming again, only to wake up screaming and running. I was at a full sprint as I wake up and in a part of the fob I didn't recognize. Thankfully, I haven't suffered from these nightmares, but I'm in constant fear of my own screwed up mind. My mother-in-law was a very funny and cool woman. She and my wife were really close, but sadly she passed away when our son was about 4 months old. Flash forward a few years later. We were living in an old 1930s era craftsman house in Pasadena, California. Our son is about 3 at the time. I was giving him a bath one night and he starts looking over my shoulder, not at random stuff, but at something. A moment passes and he asks me why Grandma calls Mommy a funny name. Long pause. I asked him what he meant, thinking he was talking about my mom. He then says, why does Grandma call Mommy Nene? I was really set back by this. My wife and I never used the nickname, it was just what her mom called her since she was a baby. I asked him where he heard that. His reply, the farmer told me. I asked him who the farmer was and he replied, his friend. I told my wife this story later, and she was of course reduced to tears over the whole nickname thing. We both knew there was no way for him to know this, and we just kinda marvel at it. Flash forward to the next weekend and my son was playing in his room. My wife was at work and I was home. I heard him talking like he was having a conversation with someone. He was saying things like, yes, no, I don't know that, then some laughing. I went into his room and asked him what he was doing and he said he was playing. I asked with who, and he said the farmer. At this point I was already thinking about the Exorcist movie and Captain Howdy. It was a little unsettling. Then I asked him where the farmer was. He said he left when I came in. So when my wife got home and I told her what had happened, and she was just as weirded out as I was. We had no idea of what to do just in case it happens again. A few days later, in the middle of the night, we both heard our son saying the following. Grandma says you and I can't be friends anymore. My wife and I rushed to his room to check on him. Both of us a little freaked. He was just sitting up on bed. Then I asked if he was okay and he said yeah. Grandma said I can't play with the farmer anymore. After that night, he never mentioned the farmer again. Not ever. He's 13 now and doesn't remember any of it. But my wife and I do though. I moved to my dad's when I was 10 and didn't know anyone in the area, except for the family my dad was friends with. Single mom with 3 kids. Luckily there was a girl a couple years older than me and we got to know each other a little over a couple years. We weren't close but ended up having the same friends. One night my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work. Which is where this gets terrifying and sad. Her mother has been helping this one lady and got to know her fairly well. She found out her sister was in a mental institution and was let out recently. The night Rob was hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door. My friend thought it was just their mom and answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there and he took off through the window to his house down the road. He never thought twice about it. It wasn't her mom. It was the sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to her sister where her family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where I don't know details of what happened and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbors to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas. Decapitated her and left her body naked in a bathtub. She also hid her head and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. About 4 years ago, I was ending my freshman year at college. I had lived in the dorms with a kick-ass roommate and pretty much had a great experience altogether. Towards the end of my last semester, something seemed different in my hall of the dorms. We were all still our lively selves, but just walking into the dorms would give you this massive feeling of dread. We all wrote it off as the stress of finals approaching, but it just felt off. Well, one night after studying, I decide to hit the shower so I can just wake up and make my way to class in a few hours. Before I keep going, I should go ahead and set the layout of our hall and the bathroom. Our hall was one of many halls on a single floor. Each hall had 4 rooms that accommodated 2 people each. The entrance to the halls were massive steel doors with a small window located at one end, and across from it was the bathroom. It seriously felt like a prison block rather than a living quarter for college students. As for the bathroom itself, when you walked in you were immediately met with 2 sets of sinks on your left and right, with massive mirrors facing each other. Then past that you had your 2 urinals and a toilet stall on your left, and 2 showers on your right. When facing the left set of sinks, you can clearly see into the showers from the mirror, if the door is open. And in the right set of sinks, you can see the reflection of the shower. The door of the bathroom was identical to the entrance to the hall, a massive steel frame with a small window that didn't allow for much of a view. The door was propped open with a giant wooden wedge that couldn't be moved unless you were really trying to close that door. So back to the story. I was all alone in the bathroom gearing up to go shower. Then I threw my change of clothes on the right side sink so that way I can reach around the stall and grab them. Once I set my stuff down, I happen to look up into the mirror and I can see in the distance something almost shimmering inside the shower stall. As I looked at it, I noticed that it slowly gets closer, like it's jumping from the furthermost layer to the next layer closer. I was kind of unsettled, but I didn't think much of it other than me coming down off of a massive Red Bull, Adderall and caffeine kick. But it starts transitioning faster. As it gets closer, I can start making out details, but nothing vivid or striking. It's just a dark mass that looks like it's covered in hair. At this point, I was freaking out hardcore since this thing is getting closer in the mirror and I'm pretty much frozen to this one spot. As it gets to the fourth layer, I got the closest look at this thing I'll ever get, and I regret every minute of it. It wasn't hair but some kind of long flowing veil. You could see through it partially, but from the torso down it was just solid black. And the face, I can't describe it. It was clearly human, but at the same time it was so far removed. There were eyes, they were black but definitely glowing somehow. I only saw this for maybe a second at the most, but it's burned into my mind forever. Then the lights cut out and I hear the door slam. It's pitch black in the bathroom, so I can't see this thing anymore. I go to open the door but it won't budge. And then this intense smell of blood hits me out of nowhere, and that's all I remember. I woke up later in the hospital. From what my RA claims, he was on his way to go use the bathroom sometime after this happened, where he found me in the shower stall with my shirt covered in blood from a massive nosebleed. He tried asking me what happened, and according to him, all I could respond with was, "It saw me," and I start freaking out. So he calls an ambulance and they get me to the hospital. All the while I'm apparently freaking out, so they sedate me to get me to calm down. I'm coming to around the time my parents show up, worried sick of course. I ask them what happened, and according to the doctors they believe I had a seizure. However, they ran CT scans soon after I was cooperative enough to do so and found no sign of any seizure occurring. Not to mention epilepsy doesn't run in my family at all. And having taken Adderall countless times in the past, I've never had a similar side effect to this day. I still can't bring myself to look into a mirror for more than a minute, and just being stuck in a room with one for an extended period will just cause me to break down. I've been to therapy going on 3 years because of this, and I've talked to countless religious leaders who, besides giving me the general, "Well, you should turn to God in times like these," talks don't recognize that kind of pattern as anything demonic or evil. And the strangest thing is that before that incident, there were no actual claims of activity in those dorms. And since I left, there hasn't been any either. It was just that one isolated incident.